and welcome back to another Blu-ray review, and this is kind of part 2 of my review of the Eureka Masters of Cinema release of Samurai Wolf 1 and 2. This is now spine number 283 in the MOC collection, and this is my review of Samurai Wolf 2. So we're going to be taking a look at the full Blu-ray in this one, and you can check out my previous video for my thoughts on the first disc in this set, the extras, and the first movie. In this one, we're talking about the second movie, Samurai Wolf 2 from 1967, and the rest of the extras and the Blu-ray at large. In fact, let's just jump into that now before we get to the film. Let's change things up a little bit and just take a closer look at the slipcover here. This is a piece by Tony Stella. His very distinctive style. I really love this piece. You get two versions there of Kiba, the lead character, portrayed by Isao Natsuyagi, and then you have these three main adversarial opponents for Kiba, I would say, of like one-on-one kind of duels that you see in both films. So it's cool to see that represented on the front cover, and that kind of impressionistic kind of I don't know what you'd call it, the flourish there with the wolf, and it almost feels like it's daubed in blood. I love that. I just think this piece is absolutely, excuse my French, fucking incredible. On the back here, we have the rundown of both movies and all the information about the extras and all that good stuff. And on the inside, we have a reversible inlay, so you can kind of display what looks to be, to me, it must be original posters for the film. So you have the first one there, which is really, really nice. That's another kind of dynamic piece that really suits the movie, I think. On the inside, you get the two discs. I really like this, the disc artwork too. And over onto the next one there. Very nice. And then I'll flip around the artwork and show you the piece for Samurai Wolf 2. Another really cool piece. I really like this one as well. It's a shame you can't kind of have both of them in there. And I almost would have thought it'd be nice to have like a nice box set with two Samurai cases, because there's two discs as well. But, you know, there's the shelf space, you know, issue that I have, certainly it has no qualms about this being a single case release. But one thing I have to give Eureka credit for here is that you have two discs for both movies, because they very easily could have put both films onto one disc, as well as extras, because both films are like an hour and 15 minutes, you know, or just under that. So I like that they, you know, preserve the quality of each film. And I will say that I didn't really talk about it in the first video, but I really enjoy the transfer on this. There's no mention of a 2K restoration, 4K restoration. It's just a 1080p HD restoration. So it's kind of a vague restoration from the original film elements, but I think both films looked fantastic. I mean, they're shot incredibly well. They're beautifully shot films, but I do think the Blu-rays looked great on both movies. So, Samurai Wolf 2, which was shot back-to-back with the first film. It was kind of a two-package deal, so to speak. And Tony Raines talks a little bit about how the studio really were looking for new faces. And Isao Natsuyagi was kind of the guy they were kind of banking on to be a big star. And they wanted Hideo Gosha to create a star vehicle for him. And he came up with the idea for both these films. And they went into production and were released fairly shortly in between each of themselves. I'll leave that in for free. You know, if you've watched the first part of my review of this and my kind of never-ending existential struggle with the fact that I called the commentary on the first film as disc rough when I didn't really mean it, I will say there are multiple instances where Chris Poggiali, hopefully that's how you pronounce it, he says things like, oh yeah, so he was the cinematographer on this, and I think he did some of I think he did that too, and I think he did this. And there's a lot of like, I think, you know. Whereas in the commentary for Samurai Wolf 2, you got Jasper Sharp right at the beginning going, this was released on so-and-so of so-and-so and so-and-so, and he's very like precise and clear, as most commentary commentators are. So that was one other thing that for me was just like, there's a bit of hesitance at times from Chris, which contrasted with the Jasper Sharp commentary. Again, I'm just going to get into it and mix all my thoughts into one muddied kind of discussion here. The beginning of Jasper Sharp's commentary on Samurai Wolf 2 felt very dry, like he was just reading off a script for the whole thing, and it just felt very stilted. And I suddenly felt like, shit, I'll go back to Chris and his just more conversational tone where he's like, I think it's that. I would prefer that than just a kind of, something that's being read off a script. And I get the kind of leaning to do that. You can kind of get your thoughts organized, you can get out exactly what you want to say. But after the first like 5 minutes, Jasper kind of relaxes into a much more conversational tone, talking about things that are happening on the screen as he's kind of talking about them, and so it loosened up considerably, and that's another great commentary I'll talk about. And well, do I need to talk about it too much more than I already have? I guess the Jasper Sharp commentary. He talks about both films really as a whole, but also a lot about the second film and a lot about this. I forget the specific name of it now. In fact, it's talked about in the essay on the booklet, so I can get you the name of it. There's an allegory kind of going on in the second film, which I would never have got, about the Minamata mercury poisoning scandal of the I think the 50s, at least still going on in the 60s, where this company was like pumping out chemicals into the sea for decades, and it was affecting the fish and the mercury, and it was poisoning people. And in Samurai Wolf 2, there's a very minor part of the story about how the local stream is being poisoned by this gold mine. And so the story of it, really, let's just dive into that. But he goes into that in the commentary. There's a lot of interesting stuff. I thought Jasper Sharp did a great job. Really enjoyed the commentary. But in Samurai Wolf 2, we follow Kiba, and a really striking opening sequence, actually, where he's just like lying in this mill where he's sleeping, and he's looking upside down, where a woman is being kind of attacked outside, and the camera does this full kind of 180 flip. It was a weird feeling when you see that sometimes on screen with a widescreen image, but again, Gosha kind of announcing himself as a guy who's fond of the stylistic flourish, and so you get that in this one as you did in the first film, but this one is a bit more conservative than the first film with some of the crazier kind of camera angles and things. But there's a lot of stuff on the road in this movie, including a convoy of prisoners, and Kiba comes across this man who's in a bamboo cage. He's been taken to prison, and this man reminds Kiba very much of his father. And I thought, holy shit, we're getting some backstory on Kiba, the Furious Wolf. And indeed, we get literal flashbacks. And he talks about it, how, his backstory with his father and stuff, which is where Tony Raines gets the kind of feeling that Kiba was never really a samurai at all, really, and served no master or daimyo. Anyway, so we get some backstory with Kiba. That's one of the things I liked about this film, but also I liked the fact that he openly said to this guy, like, you remind me of my father. There's something about, something about your face. And so he's drawn to him because of that, and ends up helping him, in his imprisonment. There's this wonderful sequence, actually. It's in the rain. It's when he's telling him that you remind me of my father. And there's just this incredible shot of Kiba with his hat, and the rain is pouring down, and it looks like straight out of a manga or just a comic book, like a splash image. I don't know. It's just such a cool visual. I really loved that. Just sometimes, and that's what you strive for in movies, I think, is to create these kinds of, these striking images that forever last in the audience's memory. Just great combinations of visuals. In this case, the costume, the way that Natsuagi was holding himself, the hat, the way the rain's falling on it, the black and white photography, like the way that it's framed. There's just so many things that go into making a really aesthetically pleasing image, or something that's just really memorable. And I think that was one of those moments in this film. I think Kiba, what really marks this away from the first film is that in the first film, Kiba is pretty, incredibly competent at what he does, fighting and defending himself. There's a few moments of kind of, struggle or whatever, but in the sequel, he really gets his ass handed to him. He gets captured. He gets strung up. For a while there, he's really not doing good, which just made it more interesting. Not to say that it's better that way, but it just was a nice, not even continuation, but it was a nice way to differentiate from the first film. It was a forward progression. It wasn't just the same. Well, it is kind of the same story in a sense, and it's the same kind of formula, but It wasn't the same presentation of his character and where his character goes. You get the backstory, you get him in more peril, and I think that makes it more interesting. We follow the character who he believes looks like his father, and his name in the film was, I'm trying to find it here in the booklet, Magobe, played by Ko Nishimura. He was a really, really good actor. I really enjoyed his part of the film. And there's some really good actors in this too. I'm not going to really talk too much about them, but I liked the love interest, so to speak, for Kiba in this film. That added another element where it was a completely different dynamic with this woman than with Lady Chise from the first film. So you get kind of a romantic lead in a sense that feels completely different from the one that he had in the first film. And at the same time, it's not the sole focus of the story either, and it just nicely complements the rest of the action. And it's all based around this man who was digging a gold mine for the Shogun in this mountain, and he then found another vein of gold on the other side of the mountain. So he's kept this part of the gold mine secret, and he's using it to fund his own kind of side hustle, and he wants to kind of keep that very close to his chest. And so when Kiba and Magobe get involved in that, then a lot of bad stuff is about to happen, and you get these side villains and showdowns and mortal peril and action scenes and stuff. And very much in vein with the first film. I thought it was really great. I just loved the style of it. I loved the character of Kiba as portrayed by Natsuyagi. It was just a nice natural continuation with more depth, and maybe just a little bit more, I hasten to say the word focused, but it doesn't take as many maybe stylistic chances as the first film, if that makes any kind of sense. So that's the only thing I'd really say in terms of comparing it to the first film, but they do feel very much one and the same. They were shot back to back, so it really doesn't, there's no surprises there. And I did want to actually just name check the cinematographer, Sadaji Yoshida, because I think both films were just shot beautifully, and that is one of the main things I really enjoy about both films is the photography. And again, that black and white, it just, as the kids say these days, hits different. Although that probably is an outdated phrase by now anyway, because I'm an old man at this point. So I heard it once, and then it's probably already completely passé. One of the things I think that really marks the second film from the first also is the locations in a large part of maybe the second half of the film. These kind of really striking mountains and these kind of what do you call it, like slate kind of rough looking hills and kind of jagged crevices and things. It reminded me very much of Hidden Fortress. Not in a way that I thought, oh, they must have filmed it in the same place they filmed Hidden Fortress, but Gosha's daughter does confirm on the interview on the first disc that this was in the same area that they filmed Hidden Fortress in the 50s with Kurosawa. But it just gives it a distinctive feeling, and there's a really striking sequence with Magobe as he kind of gives into his primal kind of lust and goes after this woman, and they're rolling down this kind of painful looking hill in slow motion. But compared to kind of the more rural kind of country roads and kind of the green in the mountains in the first film, it makes the second film feel a bit rougher around the edges too. So I really like that. I think it gave the film even more character, actually. And one other thing I wanted to mention about both films really is the use of blood. And I would say that it's sparing but striking across both films. And I use the word striking a lot, but I feel like that is probably the best single word to describe both films. But nevertheless, this isn't your typical kind of blood-soaked, blood-drenched Chanbara film, or films plural. It really uses blood in very specific key moments and in great abundance. And you're not seeing this kind of bright red blood, you're seeing this dark kind of, fluid. And I don't know, I just found the use of blood really captivating and impactful. It really added punctuation to some of these duels in ways that I thought was really, in a way, reminiscent of, say, what Kurosawa did with the climax of Sanjuro. But I mentioned that in my previous review of the first Samurai Wolf movie that first film, and I would say the second one too, they have that kind of authenticity of the production design that something like Seven Samurai has, but Seven Samurai is practically a bloodless movie, and so it has this slightly harder edge to it with the violence, but at the same time it doesn't feel extreme, and I really like that. So yeah, that's it, really. It's a bit more like not shocking, but like the showdown at the end had me a bit more like, oh my god, oh no, like oh, was it, oh, that I felt like there was more stakes, more personal stakes at the end of this. I feel like Kiba goes on a much deeper journey, which makes the potential outcome of the finale and the climactic kind of fight feel so much more heavy and full of weight, because you've seen him go through a lot more than you did in the first film. So that's something I guess I could say about the sequel. But they do, both for me, feel very much one and the same, even though they are two separate stories, that very episodic in that sense, and very clearly defined in their own stories. But you could kind of watch both films as kind of a 2 hour and 25 minute kind of big movie in a sense, but you would feel the gap in between, because it very much is kind of two separate stories that he goes on that are kind of similar, but with different characters and different feelings, different kind of colors to the kind of the things that happen, even though we have no color in the actual movie. So that's a really bad analogy, but I'll leave it in for free. You're welcome. Another extra on this second disc, we have the commentary of Jasper Sharp, which I've already covered, and then we have the Tony Raines interview. And Tony Raines is he's the guy. He's the one who you want to hear talk about these East Asian films, because he knows pretty much everything there is to know about everything. And even if he doesn't, and he researched it just before he hit record on the camera, or his cameraman hit record on the camera, he makes it sound like he's known it for a very long time. He's just, he's great. So he talks about both films. He talks about the history of the B movie and how that kind of came to pass in the 1930s, and how Japan was also producing B movies. He talks about the career of Hideo Gosha. And that's another thing I think that Jasper Sharp balanced really well in his commentary, actually, was he goes over the entire story of Hideo Gosha's life as a filmmaker in kind of two segments. He kind of first talks about his beginnings in film up until the point of Samurai Wolf 1 and 2, and then he takes a break from that to talk about other things, and then he gets back to Gosha and talks about his career after Samurai Wolf and beyond, and does the same with Natsuyagi as well. So I really appreciated that, and getting more of a... And that's another interesting thing. You have Chris Poggiali and Jasper Sharp doing two commentaries. You have Tony Raines, and then you have Hideo Gosha's daughter. 4 different perspectives, in fact 5 different perspectives with the booklet, with the essay by Tom Mez. And so certain people know certain things, and Tony Raines, who again, for the most part, always knows pretty much everything. He talks about how Gosha grew up, in his younger years through the war, but that nothing is known about those days as far as he can tell. Whereas in the commentary by Jasper Sharp, he talks very much about the fact that Gosha was trained to be in the army, and was actually kind of being groomed to be kind of a kamikaze soldier, basically, on the fateful, and I don't know too much about World War II history, but the land battle that was not to be because of the A-bomb. So he kind of was trained to be an active participant in World War II, but never actually was on the front lines. Whereas I believe it says in the Tom Mez book that he was on the front lines, and then Tony Raines says we don't know anything about that time in his life. So it's just interesting how different people find out different things, and that is kind of I think a good reason to have multiple participants when it comes to this kind of release, to have different perspectives, but also different pools of research, And you do get these discrepancies, of course, but I think that's more interesting than it is problematic. So that's one thing to consider. But I really love the Tony Raines piece. And he talks quite highly of the Samurai Wolf films, actually. He seems to be fairly enamored with them, and kind of thinks that they're worth going back to and looking at, and kind of reappraising perhaps for films that might have been left on the wayside by people who don't even know about them to begin with, or just have overlooked them for whatever reason. And that leads me into the booklet, and we'll just talk about that in full. On the front there we have a really nice image of Kiba, and on the back a struggle there between two women from the first film, I believe. That was a great sequence in the first film, actually, I have to say, with the two women going at it with the knives. That was like really tense stuff. Unfortunately, I have a little bend on my booklet there, which is just, it keeps me up at night, I have to say. It's very difficult to live with, but anyway, we open the first page here to get the traditional cast listing for both movies, set with an image from the first film, it looks like. And then we have the lone essay in this booklet, which is The Waves at Akira's Door by Tom Mes. As I mentioned, this goes into Akira Kurosawa's huge influence, on his contemporaries, but also his name value outside of Japan. And, Gosha's kind of his kind of rise in his career, but also how films like Samurai Wolf maybe just don't really get a look in because of Kurosawa's dominance. And I think that's a really interesting angle to take with this essay, and it certainly complements the rest of the extras because they talk about it in I think all of them really. I think every single extra talks about Kurosawa, and so it's just inescapable. And in the booklet we have this. That's the poster there for the first movie, which just looks gorgeous. And there's the poster there for the second movie as well. And yeah, he talks about different film writing on like the samurai film and Chanbara films. And then there's some kind of production stills from the film. And yeah, rounds off a really nice essay. Again, I would recommend reading it. And I think that he packs in a lot. I really love Tom Mes's stuff. I'm actually considering maybe getting one of his books or something, or diving deeper into his work, because I really love everything that he talks about on these Blu-rays and the commentaries he does. And in the case of this release, the very good essay that I highly enjoyed digging into. So I think that's it. I think I'm done. I think that's my thoughts on the Samurai Wolf diptych, as it were. I might have forgotten a few things, but all the more reason to go back and revisit these films. And at their brisk kind of 71, 72 minute running time paces, I can see myself going back to these quite a bit. I don't know, I really love both films, but the first film was probably my favorite, I think. But I do love digging a little bit deeper in the second one. So there's things to like about both. There's a great duel in the second film with this guy who kind of just along the way, Kiba has kind of made a guy mad, and so he wants to fight him, and they have a duel at night with this tree, and it looks like it's on a set, but there's something really beautiful about that, and the staging of it, and the inevitability of their clash. Great stuff, really great kind of theatrical staging, and yeah, I think Gosha is a great director. I'd love to see more of his stuff. Hopefully, the Eureka will release more of them, and I will gladly watch them. So, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you checked out both parts. If you're watching this far into this video, then I'm assuming you have. If you haven't, go check out my review of Samurai Wolf 1, which kind of dovetails into this one as a larger review of the entire release, which I just think really nails everything. Some really great extras. I particularly loved the interview with his daughter on the first disc, and some good commentaries that both settle into themselves, I feel like, as they go on. The great Tony Raines, a really nice essay from Tom Mes, really great transfers on two films I'd never heard of before that I absolutely loved. It's one of those really great times to be a film fan and a physical media fan, and for me, I was just in heaven watching these two movies. So, thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.